My name is Jennifer, and this is my boyfriend ZX2.
Let me be the one for you, giving you the D in my ZX2. I'll grab you by the puss, but only with your consent.
My boyfriend's name is Jaden. His mom's a lawyer and his dad's a cop. He does whatever he wants. Anybody have a cigarette? Jaden always smirks in his profile picture as he pulls his mouth to one side. His favorite movie is The Purge. He calls his mom that bitch. He smokes Newports but keeps them in a Marlboro Reds box. Anybody have any Virginia Slims? If you don't have that, I'll take a Capri.
2001 Ford Escort ZX2. It has a 2.4-liter four-cylinder ZTEC engine that SVT never breathed on. So this thing, although it looks fast, was rated at 130 horsepower and a top speed of about 128. However, the owner of this ZX2 says he got it up to 135 miles an hour on an empty road in Mexico. And then he ran out of fifth gear. Now, this owner had a previous ZX2 for 3 years, but it had body rot that Vander didn't discover until he owned 2 of the cars. So he bought this Escort a little over a year ago for just $300, and he volunteered that information, by the way. We here at RCR have a habit of not asking how much an owner paid for a car, because it's rude. That's car culture in general. You never ask how much someone paid for their vehicle, because it's invasive about their financial circumstances, as if it's some kind of contest to see who can piss farther with the least amount of pee, and then planting flags in the snow at the longest point. So if we mention a price, you know the owner brought it up voluntarily, and Vander had no problem letting us know the deal he got on this one. Hell, the only car that comes close to this in value is the Kia Spectra that Roman's friend Duncan got for free, and you can watch that video here. Anyway, long story short is that a friend got Vander into Escorts with the idea that they're a fun 4-cylinder that is different from the typical Honda fare of the late 90s and the early 2000s. And when he got this second ZX2, he carried mods over from his first, which was a 2000 model, but we'll get to modding these cars in a little bit. Okay, it's a little bit later. This Escort has an SVT Focus intake and exhaust manifold, a 2.25-inch catback exhaust, a short throw shifter, an upgraded rear spray bar, lowered spring, polyurethane chassis bushings, stage 2 clutch, and a Lightened Flywheel, aftermarket headlights and taillights, and a 2003 ZX2 bumper swap. There's also a limited slip differential and a new tune, to say nothing of the fresh coat of paint and the Mazda MX-3 bucket seats. So what's the difference between the ZX2 and the ZX3 SVT Focus? Quite a bit as far as the engine goes, because the Focus was replacing the Escort, but for a brief period of time, the two existed simultaneously. This is the very end of the Escort line. Now, the Ford Focus ZX3 SVT made 10.5-to-1 compression, whereas this ZX2 ZTEC motor only made 6/10 to 1. I know I'm calling that wrong. 9 to 6 to 1. The ZX3 SVT ZTEC motor had dual intake runners and a Cosworth exhaust manifold, hotter cams, and forged connecting rods, whereas the ZX2 didn't get any of that. Now, the engines are similar enough that you can swap the SVT intake runners onto a ZX2, but they won't work. And the reason they won't work is because the ECUs for the ZX2 and the ZX3 are different. And they're different enough that they can't make heads or tails of variable intake geometry. So what happens, and it's true on this car, is that while it does have SVT intake runners, the intake runners are stuck in the long position. Like, the long intake runners are the only ones that stay open. The short ones, there's nothing going on in there. The path is closed, which is fine for high revving. It runs great at high revs, but at low revs, well, it feels like a 90s car. That doesn't mean it's limpy. It's great at high revs. The Ford Escort ZX2 package was to be the coupe sister of the ZX3 hatchback while they shared the same stage. But unlike the ZX3, no upper trim SVT tuner option was offered as a tier above the regular ZX2. This was as high as the Escort was ever going to ascend. And the coupe got stiffed because hot hatches were king by 1998 when the two-door ZX2 debuted. And you're supposed to call this a ZX2. Ford didn't want you to call this an Escort. So it was just like the Dodge Neon SRT4. Like, this isn't a Neon, it's an SRT4. But there was nothing in it for Ford to push the ZX2 in advertising or engineering. No one wanted an Escort anymore. I mean, who wants a sports coupe in the early 2000s? What is this, the 70s? Are you gonna roll out a personal luxury car too? Oh wait, Ford, you did. You made the Mercury Cougar. Ugh. Now the ZX2 was only really supposed to last from 1998 to 2000, but Ford kept it around. Maybe to go after the SRT4 from Chrysler? Maybe people protested that they didn't want the Escort name going away? But it kept going for another 3 years. This is the official car of summer camp counselors getting their first hint of hot box in the backs of these things. Aggressive heavy petting. It's the car for the guy who who thinks fisting is part of foreplay. But it makes sense because that's how you're supposed to treat an Escort. You're supposed to give it 2 fists. It's like Mike Tyson's hook to the body and hook to the upper and the uppercut. What's the front? What's the back? You beat on Escorts, and that's where it shines. The cars are so cheap, who cares? I suppose a Honda would be better for beating on, but gosh, the Fords take it well too. Because like so many cars I adore, the Escort ZX2 had to live in the Focus's shadow. No one wanted sport coupes anymore. It's like if you were gonna get a car that's a two-door that's kind of fast, you would go right to a muscle car, or maybe you would go right to the Mustang. The 4.6 modular Mustangs of the early 2000s were way better dollar for horsepower than you got with the ZX2. I guess you could say you'd want to have it for tuner cred, but again, the SVT Focus is way better at that, and it drives a lot better. But I thank Ford for making the ZX2, for giving the Escort one last shot at glory before it went away. It's like an AMC Hornet, or an AMC Javelin, or an AMC Eagle, or a Studebaker Golden Hawk, or an MGB GT, or a Mercury Marauder. A big shining finishing move before it's all over. I don't know if I would want one of these though. Because while it's fun at the upper end, it's not an SVT Focus. But I'm glad Vander has one, and one of these cars is still rolling around. From cost alone, this is pretty much a resto-modded car, which should give you some kind of idea why a car like this endures. It's a perfect learning car. Even if you don't know your way around a wrench, you can learn. It's the automotive equivalent of those practice corpses that they use in medical school. It doesn't matter how beat up the car is. There's always something you can learn from a car like this. Because battle wounds are the oldest form of storytelling.
Knock, knock, who's there? It's a ZX2, an Escort for that derriere.